All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for the delay. We've missed a few. That is not my co-host Eric Larshall's fault. That's mostly my fault. I'll take the blame. It's Cinco de Mayo, so we're going to pound this out really quick. UFC 274 in Phoenix, headlined by yours truly, Charles de Bronx Oliveira, taking on Justin Gaethje for the light heavyweight strap, co-headlined by the strawweight Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza. We'll just slide right into this. La Rochelle, if you want to take it away for the first fight.
Yeah, and just the card itself, right? It's dynamite. You got guys in the lightweight about chomping at the bit at the third fight with Michael Chandler, and it has getting right into it. Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson. Sorry, my mind just slipped for a bit. Was in an accident earlier, everyone. Let's take a break. My neck is chomped. We're getting after this.
It's been a long day at the workplace.
Been a long day at the workplace. Getting started, all right? Donald Cerrone fighting Joe Lauzon. First thing I could say about this fight, Cerrone's minus 175. This fight would have been a headliner 10 years ago, right? Don't get me wrong. Both these guys are legends in the sport, right? Cerrone, 36-16. Lost his last 5 out of 6 in the UFC. Lauzon hasn't shown to do much better. I think this fight was a stretch to have on the main card in first place. But Cerrone's last win was in May 4th, 2019 against Iaquinta. I mean, he's 39 years old. Joe Lauzon's 37. What do you see in this tale?
Well, if I could sum this one up for us, it's the battle of the coaches. Cowboy Cerrone has a ranch. He runs a coaching center. Joe Lauzon MMA. A lot of good guys go through there. Both these guys are old as balls. Lauzon, all I have to say, he won his last fight, and that was in 2019. The fight before that was against Grushmacher. I'm pronouncing that maybe. And he went on a 3-fight losing streak with Grushmeyer, Clay Guida, who we all know. And after the Grushmeyer fight, he got knocked out, and then he retired, and then he unretired. So if I'm going to sum this up correctly, I would say don't bet on this fight in any regard, because if we're being honest, Cowboy Cerrone should easily win this fight because Lauzon's actually been retired for a minute. He's full in coaching mode. I honestly, like La Rochelle said earlier, I don't know why this is even on the main card. I think it's probably because Dana White's like, Cowboy, this is your last fight. I'm going to let you lead off the fucking main card. I'll let you get your pay-per-view money. With that being said, if I could break down how this fight's going to go, I think Cerrone is by far the better fighter in this. The only thing Lauzon has in this is he's a dog. He's going to pressure. So it's going to really depend on what Cowboy shows up. But if we're being honest, Cowboy has the more skills between both of them.
I think he has the more skills. They both possess high-level jiu-jitsu. That's not going to be in question. I think the X factor would come down to Joe's ring rust, right? He hasn't fought in 3 years, and that's tough, especially for these older guys. Yeah, I give Cerrone the advantage on the feet with his dynamic striking. I also agree with you, Evan, that this fight, it's tough to bet on. Minus 170. It's almost a pick 'em per se, I guess. If you had to pick one, I would go Cerrone by knockout in the first if you're feeling risky. Ring rust will do a lot to guys, and the older you get, you slow down a bit. Look what happened to Nick Diaz in his return against Robbie Lawler.
So I think we're in agreement here. This isn't a fight to bet on, probably not to put your money. If you want to put your money, I'd put Cerrone. I'd just take his money line. I mean, it's not that big. It's a pick 'em. If you want to bet on this, I would stay away from it because it's more of just Dana White allowing these two legends to just go out together for their last fight. I don't see either of these guys returning to the UFC. Next, we have a light heavyweight fight between Ovince St. Preux and Shogun Rua.
Another fucking blast from the past, right? Shogun plus 190. Neither of these guys are ranked. It's a rematch, but that was fucking 8 years ago, right? Shogun's 27-12-1. He's only won 2 out of his last 5 with the draw in between. I mean, there's not many positives to say about it. He's way past his prime. It's like sometimes you got to give the curtain call and hang it up a little early. I think he's overreached that a tad in this fight. He's got a 2-inch height and 4-inch reach disadvantage. And it's at 40 years old, it's hard to say this fight's going to go much different than it did 8 years ago as far as how did Shogun progress.
Yeah, in the first fight, Ovin knocked him out 30 seconds into the fight. 2 things I want to say about this fight. Shogun Rua, you are 39 years old. please wear pants for this fight because, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you, he's going to come out in the shortest of shorts you've ever seen. Ovince St. Preux's minus 250. I don't know if I agree with those odds. He's been going in between heavyweight and light heavyweight. He's 39 years old right now. I mean, as recently as his fight against Ben Rothwell, he weighed in at 240 pounds. Against Alonzo Menafield, he weighed in at 205. So he's been, going in between the heavyweight, light heavyweight. And the only reason I see why they put it at minus 200 is because if you watch Shogun Roe's latest fights, he is so old to the point where past round one, he is so tired. His hands are below his knees. I honestly don't know why he's fighting anymore. I think it's just because he loves to fight. He's a legend. So is OSP. This is another one that just leads off the card with two blasts from the past. 10 years ago, like Largel said, this is a banger you would have on a card. You have two old men at this point. The only bet that I would have on this is you're either taking Shogun by finish in some way in round one, or Ovince should get the dub, because even though Ovince is also way older, like I said, he's been going between heavyweight, light heavyweight, and he's fought some beasts lately. He lost to Tanner Boser. He lost to Jamal Hill, who is a beast. He beat Alonzo Menafield, who's a tank. He lost to Ben Rothwell, split decision, lost to Nikita Krylov, lost to Dominic Reyes. So he's been fighting good people. I don't know what Shogun Roe's been doing lately, but this is another fight where you see just two old guys who are just trying to show that they still can have it.
Yeah, as far as Hua's last few bouts, he beat Lil Nog, who's also super old, and he lost to Paul Craig and Anthony Smith. So those are middle to top tier guys in their own regard. I don't know how OSP and Hua are getting these fights to begin with. It's a really tough start to this. It's a really slow start to this main event, to be honest. Again, OSP's lost 3 out of his last 5 to subpar opponents. So none of these guys are riding any sort of streak and get some momentum behind. I would guess this fight goes the distance, but it's a pick 'em. And like Evan said, I think if you want to pit the dog on Hua, it'd be some first round form of finish.
Yeah, it has to be just first round, just based on just his cardio. And I'm not knocking him on his cardio. It's just, I think it's the age. Is just, if you watch his most recent fights, it's just round 1 to round 2. There is such a big discrepancy in how he approaches his opponent when he walks into the ring round 2. So if you're going to bet the dog, you're going to take him by some sort of finish, because Shogun's not going to get this done by the judges. Ovince should easily be able to handle this. And I'm sorry we're moving so fast. It's just these fights aren't sexy. But now let's get into something sexy. We have El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson taking on Michael Chandler.
This is a fight that's been in the works, I'd say, since Chandler, even before he entered the UFC. It's fans have been dying to see. Much like Ferguson when he was in the ranks to fight Khabib back in his prime. It just something didn't pan out. But ladies and gents, we got it now. These men could not hate each other more, I think. The Tony Ferguson's quote, as soon as Chandler came to the UFC, beat Dan Hooker and got a title shot, Ferguson was like, oh, that's Dana White's privilege. And so that got under his skin a little bit. And since the Dan Hooker fight, Chandler's lost a few. So that blows my mind off the rip that Michael Chandler is a minus 380 favorite in this fight, right? He's 22-7, won 1 out of his last 3 in the UFC, but they're all elite opponents, right? He's top 5 solidified. He beat Dan Hooker, Benson Henderson, and arguably Gaethje in what was fight of the year last year. Then lost to Charles Oliveira. Absolute chaos in his hands, very powerful striker. We've seen it in all of his bouts. Showed his toughness and chin in his last fight with Gaethje, and I think that's what swayed the odd makers a tad in this fight, making him such a favorite.
Yeah, and with Tony Ferguson in mind, let's not forget he had a 12-fight win streak, and then he lost. He's on a 3-fight losing streak to Justin Gaethje, who's fighting for the title, Charles Oliveira, who currently holds the belt, and then Beneil Dariush, who's probably going to fight Islam for the next title. So he's fought the top 3 opponents in the lightweight. If you've listened to Tony Ferguson's interview this week, he's very serious, very pissed off. He's made it known that he felt that Dana White screwed him during that 12-fight winning streak, never gave him a title fight, and then he had to fight these 3 beasts. I don't know how I feel, but I know with just listening to Tony Ferguson's interviews this week, he's been very serious. He looks like he's on point. And this is honestly, it's going to be a very interesting fight for Tony Ferguson just to begin with, because he's already fought a Justin Gaethje, but that was the first one when he took damage beyond reason, a lifetime of damage. But he already knows what to expect in a Michael Chandler. This is a guy that's very almost like Justin Gaethje, but in a different sense of he's more athletic, but he's going to come forward. He's looking for that overhand right power shot at all times. If you take him to the ground, he's very stocky, very tiny, like a midget, but he's built. I'm very interested to see how Tony approaches this fight, Lara, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. Do you think Tony's going to stand and bang with him for 3 rounds, or do you think that Tony might take a shot on the ground, or do you think Michael takes a shot on the ground?
I don't think either of them take a shot, at least in the first round. I think Chandler doesn't really shy away from his game plan because it's worked, to a point in his last few fights. With Oliveira, had him badly hurt in the first round. And then again with Gaethje, had him rocked and wobbled in the first few rounds. So if I'm Chandler, I'm putting the pace on quick, like he has done 3 5-minute rounds. I'm sure he wishes it was a title fight. I think, like I said, he showed a lot of grit and toughness in that Gaethje fight when his cardio was in question prior to that. And his gas tank has gotten better. He poses plenty of problems for Tony in the early rounds, let's be honest. And Tony, a guy who hasn't won since he beat Donald Cerrone in 2019, who knows what's playing in that mental aspect of Tony, whether his interviews are all for show, or I actually think he hates this guy in Chandler. So I think he's out here to prove a point. I think Chandler sticks to the early game plan of being fast, aggressive, getting his hands on him. And I don't see Tony shooting for a shot. If anything, maybe keeping his distance, using his long arms for some counter strikes, but he's not one to shy away from being in the pocket likewise.
Yeah, and I just want to point out something real quick. If you look at Charles Oliveira's last 11 fights, they're all wins, and he finished all of them except Tony Ferguson. And let's not forget what he did to Tony Ferguson's arm. If you remember during the commentary, Joe Rogan was literally screaming, "Tony, please tap. Your arm's about to get mangled." He didn't tap. So that just shows how tough he is. First off, it's disgusting that the odd makers are going to give Tony Ferguson plus 300. I hope everyone listening right now puts some money on Tony Ferguson plus 300, because there is no point in hell of you putting your money on Michael Chandler at a minus 300. That is so stupid, considering he's also lost every fight he's fought in the UFC except Dan Hooker. And what has Dan Hooker done right after that? Oh, that's right. He fucking got fucked on by Islam. So it doesn't even give you a good idea of what Chandler's capable of. If you already know, I'm putting my money on Tony. The only question I have about Tony is the fact that his last 3 fights, especially the Gaethje fight, Gaethje gave him so much damage that most fighters in their career, like Conor McGregor, hasn't taken that damage in his whole career. Then he goes against Oliveira, who basically put on a demonstration of how to get 3 different submissions in jiu-jitsu at a world-class level. So, Lara, my question to you is, do you think the damage that Tony's taken in his last 3 fights is going to impede him / worry him in any way? Because we already know Chandler's going to put that foot forward and start throwing bombs.
I don't think it's made it worrisome or impeded him, because if you take the damage and Gaethje's at the top, right at the point of the peak or whatever, starting to come down, Oliveira beat his ass, but it wasn't as brutal and physically damaging as the fight with Gaethje. And then Dariush outworks him, outclasses him, but a lot of it's on the ground and in the wrestling department. So it's whether he's coming into his own. I think he stands just the best overall advantage. This is a fight against Chandler who he won't put you down and control you. Literally no one can do. I mean, Chandler's he's no Dariush, he's no Khabib. He's nothing like that. And I don't think he's going to choose to fight that way regardless. So if I'm Tony, this is the fight you want. This is to get you right back into title contention. And I love it that you're taking him on this fight, because plus 300 is absurdly disrespectful. And minus 380 for Chandler on a fight that we're not certain on any regard how he could win. $38 to win 10. You do the math. That's pretty fucked. So I like Tony in this in any way possible. Slick submissions, unorthodox striking, who can catch the fuck out of anybody, including Chandler, because he's been knocked out in his fight with Oliveira. I love Tony in this fight too. And I think it's a who's, and he's going to put his stamp in the UFC. Why I think he's still trying to prove that point why we should have never got the chance from Bellator regardless.
Yeah, two things, ladies and gentlemen, that I wanted you to hear from that, Larshel. First off, I wanted you to hear that Oliveira knocked Chandler out in that fight, because that's going to be really important when we get to the main event about what I'm going to talk about. And second off, I want you to remember that Tony, technically it was a TKO loss against Gaethje, but he was still standing when Herb Dean called that fight. So if there's anyone out there that thinks Chandler is going to flatline him, you're fucking wrong, because I mean, I watched Gaethje pound him for 4 rounds and he still wasn't out. So if you're thinking of Chandler, you're kind of screwed in the sense of you're not touching that money line. If you're going to touch that money line, then you're listening to the wrong podcast, and God bless you. And if you're trying to shrink that line down to somehow, a knockout or a submission by Chandler, you're dead wrong too, because he's not going to submit Tony and he's not going to knock him out, because we witnessed, if Oliveira can submit him with that deep of an armbar, then, I mean, I'm telling you right now, Chandler's not even going to be able to pull an armbar like that to begin with. So in this fight, you're getting Tony at plus 300, probably more by the time the lines close Saturday. So why not take him? I mean, based on his interviews this week that I've witnessed so far, this man is fucking pissed off and he's dead serious. And, all fighters say they've been, they train their hardest for their fights, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But knowing Tony, as long as Larshel and I've watched him in the UFC, and from my point of view, this has been the most serious slash confident slash just zoned in that I've ever seen Tony Ferguson. So I know this fight's going to be a barn burner, and it's even better because you're getting him at plus 300. So why not take him? I mean, you could probably get him at plus 600 for a knockout on Michael Chandler. I wouldn't take submission just because Michael Chandler is a fucking thick ass wrestler, and knowing Tony, unless he somehow gets him in a Darce, which, Tony's pretty good at that. But actually, that's a great question for our special in here. Larshel, do you think a fucking submission by Tony is possible?
I don't think it's outlandish. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, by knockout is plus 600, and submission could be plus 6 to 8. The thing, especially with wrestlers, Tony has shown you shoot in on him, which is what wrestlers love to do with power doubles. Tony's so good at getting his hips away and at a perpendicular angle, which ideally sets up, a dark. He's hit that more times, I think, those specific chokes than anyone else in the UFC. And they work especially well on guys with shorter arms because it's less length and distance for you to get over their arm and under their chin to lock it up. So that's not far-fetched at all, especially, if Tony catches him with one of those stiff-ass jabs or front kicks and just naturally Chandler ducks under and tries to get it. That's a perfect setup for Tony. So that's not too far-fetched to see it ending that way as well. I love that call.
The only thing I will say about this is if you think the UFC is rigged or anything, then you're going to want to listen to this, because I'm promising you Dana White wants Michael Chandler to win this fight, because he has had Dana White privilege, and it's clear that Dana White wants Michael Chandler to fight for a title. That's why he's giving Tony this fight. And I think he really wants Tony to lose so Tony will retire. But with that being said, if I'm going to get Tony at a dog of 3-1, I'm taking it every time. I don't give a shit. Even if it's against Habib and I know he's going to lose, I'm taking Tony plus 300.
Yeah, I think that's one of the few that we've told the viewers that, Evan and I actually agree on, and we're both going to place our own personal money on this. So for those tuning in, give us the benefit of the doubt. I think we've earned that trust by now. And hammer Tony if you're tuning in Saturday night.
All right, now let's get to the co-main. It's a title. It's the strawweight. We have the champ, Rose Namajunas, taking on a rematch versus Carla Esparza.
A rematch that I totally forgot about until I was doing my research, because, again, much like the fight with OSP and Shogun, this rematch, 8 years in the making. I guess the
Ultimate Fighter.
Stars align. Yeah, the stars aligned in the Ultimate Fighter, which a lot of those girls who pioneered the whole sport in general have been around still, and they're still dominating. I mean, who's to say Rose Namajunas at minus 220, women's strawweight champion, is not in her absolute prime right now? And that's 8 years later, right? She's 12-4, won four out of her last 5, all title wins, beat Wei Li twice, Andrade and Joanna. She's, in her own regard, clearing out the weight class, much like Shevchenko and Nunes did before Pena came along. She's got a 4-inch height and 2-inch reach advantage, very elusive and diverse in her striking, which complement her ground game to one and the same. So let's hear your thoughts about Esparza, because this is looking tough.
Yeah, like you said, Esparza is also one of those pioneers of this whole division. Been around since like the infancy of this division in the UFC. She's 18-6. She beat Rose 8 years back or whatever it is. She's coming off back-to-back, or actually 5-fight win streak. Her last fight was against Yan Jinan, who's currently ranked 5th, won on ground of pound in a crucifix, mind you. And Yan Jinan was known as the ground and pound, took care of that. Before that, beat Marine Rodriguez in a split decision, but it shouldn't have been a split decision. Esparza won this, and Esparza played her cards perfectly right in this fight because she sat out for a year or two because she said, all I want is this title fight. And she just had to wait a little bit while Wei Li and Rose cleared it up. But if I'm be honest, Esparza brings a well-rounded game to this fight. She doesn't specialize in anything. She's just well above average in every factor of the game. I just think Rose is just leaps and bounds above her in the sense of just her mental game. I mean, she's been training with Trevor Whitman, Kamaru Usman, and those guys only think dubs. I mean, Usman's the pound for pound number 1 right now. And if you're going to be training with the pound for pound number 1, he's not going to be around for any shits and giggles. You're in there to fucking train and you're in there to fucking win. I like Rose in this fight. I think, it's also a women's fight. And I'm just saying, I'd take the over in the fight just because, especially in a title fight like this, I just don't see Rose doing what she did to Wei Li. I mean, that fucking head kick was insane, but let's be honest, that doesn't fucking happen all the time.
No, agreed. And a good point on taking the over, I like to emphasize, especially in these rematches, right? Sometimes it takes these fights a little longer to get going for them, the mutual respect with each other, and they got to see how it's going to play out. Because best believe, even if it was 8 years ago, they're both looking at tape and all their coaches are being like, okay, we've both evolved in this regard, but let's go back to the actual fight we had together. Same size, same style. They've both evolved, but there's a lot to learn even from those tapes that were that long ago. I still love Rose in this at -220. The fact you brought up that she trains with Kamaru Usman, that's that championship mindset. To me, that's the X factor in this fight. She is around killers, elite killers, and that's not a knock to Esparza by any means, right? She's 8-5 since their fight 8 years ago, and she's riding a 5-fight win streak. I just think there's that extra level of competition that Rose has been facing steadily, at least for the past 4 to 5 years. My pick, being bold and honest, I'll take Rose by knockout in round 2. Put a stamp on it. Feeling good about this one.
I fucking love that pick. I also want to just point out, this might be an indication of where Esparza goes, and this also leads back to her training with Usman. Let's not forget, her most recent fight, Esparza, was in Fury Grappling, which for those of you that don't know is basically jiu-jitsu, and all the greatest wrestlers / jiu-jitsu people, they go, and it doesn't really count to your fucking wins or losses, but it's something extra for these fighters to do. That was her most recent fight. She lost to Danielle Kelly by Dr. Stoppage in Fury Grappling. And Danielle Kelly, for those of you that don't know, is one of the most raw grapplers in women's sports. So that could be an indication of where she thinks Rose might be weak. She might be trying to take this to the ground. But that being said, Laura and I just said, she trains with Usman, and Usman has never been taken down in the UFC. Unless you're Colby Covington, who claims he took him down in the last fight. That, maybe we can argue about that. It was for
he
half
lost
a second.
Tooth for that. He lost a tooth for that statistic. All right, let's give him that takedown.
Yeah, okay, fine. He's been taken down once by Colby Covington for about a split second. He has 99% grappling defense. So he's training with Rose. Rose knows how to defend a fucking takedown if she's training. And let's not forget, how did Francis beat Cyril Gane in his last fight? Oh, that was his wrestling. Oh, where did Francis learn this fight? Oh, he went up and visited Trevor Whitman and Usman to teach him. So if Esparza's game plan is to take her down, which I think is probably the smart game plan, only because you definitely don't want to stand across the octagon from Rose, because Laura said earlier how versatile of a striker she is. Rose isn't a slouch on the ground either. I mean, she's training with pound for pound.
Absolutely. Like I said, put a stamp on it. Although, yeah, if you say basically fuck Evan and Eric, then go ahead and pick Carla. She did submit Rose Carla. She did submit Rose 8 years ago, but Father Time has put a damper on that. Not in Esparza's favor. Rose has only gotten leaps and fucking bounds better.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree with, if you're trying to make some fucking money, then follow Lauro on the knockout. I'm going to say that Rose wins this fight. I'm not going to say knockout. I think it goes to the judges' scorecard. But if you're trying to make some fucking money, take Rose by knockout only because it won't. This isn't going to. No one's winning this fight by submission. If Esparza wins this fight, it's going to be if you're not going to listen to us, at least listen to this. Take Esparza by knockout. Don't take Esparza by the judges' scorecard because I do not see how she can go 5 rounds and outpoint Rose over a 5-round fight.
100%. Couldn't say it any better.
All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is what your tingling little ball sacks have been waiting for. The big boy. Look at Lauro getting pumped because it's his man, Charles the Bronx Oliveira, taking on Justin Gaethje for the light heavyweight strap, most tough division in the UFC. Lauro, take it away about our boy.
Fucking finally. I'm going to start you right here. Finally, Oliveira's getting the fucking respect he deserves for once, being the favorite in a fucking title fight that he's defending, right? Minus 170. I couldn't care less. They keep lining him up. He keeps knocking him the fuck down. In what way? Choice is you have it. He doesn't lose. He is, I will say it right now, he is the most well-rounded fighter the UFC has on its roster, regardless of weight class. I don't care what anyone else says. You want to challenge it? See me in the comments. Give me a call. I'm free anytime, right? 32-8. Won last five out of his 5 in the UFC. Last 2 were title defenses. Beat Kevin Lee, Ferguson, finished Chandler and Poirier, right? Has reached his absolute fucking prime. This is a dangerous human being to be around. 4-inch reach advantage. And like I said, Charles is the most well-rounded fighter the UFC has to offer. Point out a weakness, but let's get this rolling.
Yeah, I mean, we probably should have put a disclaimer on this before. If you haven't already seen/heard, our favorite fighter is Charles Oliveira, but being the gracious host that we are, I'm going to tell you why Justin Gaethje might win this fight. So we have Justin Gaethje's 23-3, my bad. Just came off a fight of the night contender versus Michael Chandler. His fight before that, he lost to Khabib. Fight before that, he beat the shit out of Tony. Now, what you get out of Justin Gaethje is the hardest leg kicks in this whole sport. You also get a guy that has said it in his own words, I'm in there to destroy and I'm there to get destroyed. He said, and I quote, I'm either knocking someone out or I'm going to get knocked out. So why could he possibly beat Oliveira? And he's not going to beat Oliveira. I'll just say that right now, because if we haven't learned in his most recent fights, the fight doesn't start till Oliveira gets knocked down in the first round. All right. Just that being said. So when Oliveira gets dropped in the first round against Gaethje, just to let you know, that's when the actual fight starts, okay? Even Oliveira has said it himself. He says, I don't start fighting until I get hit in the face hard. With that being said, the only reason I want to point something out is let's look at Gaethje's 3 losses. Khabib for the title. Poirier for the title. Eddie Alvarez for the title. I think we're running on a streak. His losses are against the champs. Now, with that being said, Oliveira has pointed it out too. As he beat Chandler, he basically said Chandler and Gaethje are very similar. They're going to step forward and they're going to try to throw bombs. How do I beat that? He said, I just have to do crisp boxing and throw up the middle. And how did he beat fucking Chandler? He waited for his shot and then he threw a crisp left hook right up the middle and clipped him. Now, is Gaethje and Chandler different? Yes, because I think Gaethje's way harder to knock out than Chandler. So I don't see Oliveira knocking him out. But what I will say is Oliveira has the best jiu-jitsu in the sport, and he's going to get on that back and he's going to climb that tree and he's going to submit him.
How we've been saying this, top of the fucking food chain, nothing to fuck around with. And great that that Gaethje put the hands on Chandler. Chandler and Oliveira are not the same human being at all. I think Chandler's damn near a foot shorter, right? And what is Gaethje's favorite weapon? That rear uppercut and his leg kicks. All right, nothing to get away with that. But Charles doesn't typically duck down after he gets clipped and things of that nature. If anything, it's a high guard that he gets bull rushed and gets caught standing high. And that's Gaethje's best weapon, right? What I'll say about Gaethje right now and the lightweight landscape, he does possess the hardest hitting knockout power of any lightweight in the division. I'll give him that without a doubt. Will he clip and hurt Charles probably in the first round? Yes.
100%.
Yes. Put your money on that. If that was some fucking prop bet, yes, that's probably going to happen. But can he put him away? Like you said, when Charles gets clipped hard in the first, that's when the fight actually starts. And we've seen it twice, tenfolds over now. Clearly hasn't affected him after the fights because Charles not only won, but he is defending his belt very frequently, if not be mistaken. Every 3 months, he's back on a main event. Well deserved. So yeah, that the X factor is Charles surviving that damage. He's inevitably going to take in the first round. God forbid it goes to the ground. I think we all know that how that ends up. But I'd love to see, and I think it's very possible. Charles, he won't shoot for a double, but if he can duck and get into the clinch range, Gaethje's in a world of trouble too. He's already been submitted by Khabib, so that will not leave the back of his head. He's like, okay, I'm not fucking invincible. So how do you think his training camp went about this? Did he focus more on submission defense or how to attack a taller, rangier fighter? Because we've seen Oliveira has all of the tools in his head, shoulders, knees, and toes. All the tools in the shed, right? He can hit you with whatever fucking limb he wants from any distance. So if I'm Gaethje or if I'm any of y'all fucks betting on Gaethje, you better hope it ends early. And you take it by knockout. That's the only option you're going to have because if it drags into the deeper rounds, by deeper, I mean second and on, Charles has the advantage. Prove me
and
wrong, but that's not going to happen.
Let's not forget, how did Khabib finish Gaethje? With a mounted triangle. So if you're telling me Khabib, who does Dagestani wrestling, can get a mounted triangle on your ass, tell me what the greatest submission artist in the UFC is going to be able to do. Because if you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, a mounted triangle is very hard to pull off. And especially when you're Khabib, who doesn't really employ that type of submission. God forbid fucking Oliveira gets in that position because he might just break your neck. I'm going to tell you how to bet this fight. And it's the same way you bet every Oliveira fight. Whoever his opponent is, you only bet that he wins in the first round. If it's not a first round knockout, you're taking Oliveira every time. Okay. And I promise you, yes, is Oliveira probably going to get wobbled in that first? Is he probably going to lose the first round? Yes, he loses every fucking first round, but then it's 4 rounds after that. And if we look at Gaethje's track record, Eddie Alvarez lost title, Dustin Poirier lost title, Khabib lost title. Gaethje doesn't really do well in title fights. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up with my bets. Max bet Oliveira money line, max bet Oliveira by finish, and then sprinkle Justin Gaethje first round knockout if you want to be a pussy and try to hedge your bet.
Yeah. And if this isn't a testament to this, it's minus 500 for the fight not to go the distance. All right. So don't pussyfoot around this. Someone's getting finished. Someone's going home with the belt decisively. I love Oliveira by submission in the second or third. Flip a coin, you pick it, fucking hammer it. That's a wrap on the night. This is going to be an exciting card, ladies and gents.
This is actually a really good card. The last one was disappointing. It's Cinco de Mayo. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll let you get out there early. My co-host, Eric La Rochelle.
Here we are. Tune in. Get some drinks. Play some golf. Fuck whatever you do Saturday. Get through the business because these fights are at night and they're going to turn the fuck up. So have a great weekend. We'll see you there.